Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NextGen Planners podcast. My name is Dan, and I'm the head of community experience here at NextGen Planners. And today I am very, very happy to be joined by the wonderful Mr. Dennis Harhalakis. How are you doing today, Dennis?
I'm doing really well, thank you, Dan, and well done for getting Harhalakis on the first go without even any
Yeah.
practicing.
I must admit, before we had a chat for the first time a couple of months ago, I was a bit terrified by pronouncing that surname. But I've heard you say it a few times now, so I've just memorized how you say it and then just decided to say it like that. So there was no excuses for me to get it right, get it wrong today. So for anyone who doesn't know Dennis, he is a certified money coach and the founder of Cambridge Money Coaching. So today's episode, we'll be talking more about that kind of side of financial planning, which is a very exciting side of financial planning as well. So to kick things off, Dennis, we ask everyone this question, and it's really interesting to get an idea of what people actually get up to on a daily basis. So can you tell us what a typical day looks like for you? What do you do every single day?
Actually, I tell you what I do every day. I get up, I walk the dogs for probably 40, 50 minutes or something. Then I come back and I have breakfast and I listen to podcasts or just generally enjoy the morning. And I find that really, really works for me. I'm really lucky. I can walk out of the house and walk in somewhere nice. And to me, that's a real privilege and it sets me up for the day. So if that's the kind of thing you were asking about what I do every day, that's how it starts. But so more broadly speaking, there's kind of three strands to the work I do. One is first is one-on-one coaching, and that's with individuals and couples. So helping them to understand their relationship with money, and we can tease that out a little bit later on. But basically, how they think, how they feel, how they behave around money, and that's one-on-one work. That's part of my day, and teaching them to have so couples as well, so better decisions, reduced anxiety, and communicate in healthy ways. So when you look at couples communicating in healthy ways around money is really, really important. But also when you think about all the messaging that you do subconsciously, if you have kids, then communicating in healthy ways to your children around money and anything else is also really important. Um, I run workshops and webinars for planners and IFAs on understanding client money behavior. And I also do financial well-being webinars. Somewhere in there, I try and write some blogs. I go on podcasts to raise awareness of money coaching. I'm also going to be training people who want to become money coaches later on in the year. And I try and get through that LinkedIn inbox as well.
It's wow, it's a packed day. But this is like really cool to hear about, like especially the rise in money coaching, and we'll talk more about this later on in the podcast. But like the idea of money coaching, even probably about 5 years ago, like was certainly in its infancy, if not heard of by a lot of people. And throughout the pandemic, and especially as well, it's grown in massive significance. And there's a lot of people now who do this sort of work, and it's really good to see. And all of the stuff that you just mentioned there, I'm sure that a lot of financial planners would hear that and think, God, that sounds really cool. I could do that. And
You
I think that's what
can.
we're trying to do. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're trying to do with this podcast today, is just to show and to kind of to prove everyone that this is something that they could do alongside what they normally do as well. So good stuff. You look like you're going to say something there. Go on.
Well, it's all complementary to what you already do. So,
Mm.
learning to make better decisions, reduce anxiety, and communicate in healthy ways is not just around money. It can be in anything. And developing a healthy relationship with money, the same process as developing a healthy relationship with food, a healthy relationship with exercise, healthy relationship with yourself. So, the framework for understanding that around money, I tend to think of as the money coaching framework. But learning how to make better decisions around anything is really, really important because you are the result of the decisions you make. And most of the decisions we make are subconscious. So teasing that out for people and helping people understand how that process works so they can move towards the person they want to be, not be undermined and be moving away from the person they want to be, is really, really powerful. So that works in any area of life. And yeah, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea, I mean, this all comes down to the idea that money is emotional, and even saying that sentence there, if you said that, what, 20 years ago, people will be like, what are you talking about? Like, money is agnostic. Money doesn't have emotions. But we're not talking about money having emotions. We're talking about our emotions to do with money. And it does, it's hugely emotional. You know, it's often one of the first things that we think about on a day when we wake up, and the last thing that we think about before we go to sleep.
Absolutely. So numbers are numbers, but if you put pound signs in front of them, you change them into values.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates an emotional relationship. What I earn is not a number. What I earn is a value I assign to myself. What I charge is a value. So yes, their emotions are at the heart of that. And you're right. You know, money coaching has come on massively in terms of public awareness in the last 5 years. And if you ask yourself, well, if I want to get better at anything, you want to get better at golf, you want to get better at podcasting, you want to get better at yoga, where would you go, right? You'd go to a coach, or you go to someone that can show you and guide you. And yet money, which runs through our lives and we use it every day, never had anyone to money coach you. So
yeah,
very exciting times in the money coaching space.
it is great stuff. So one of the things that you've actually done for us here at NextGen, and something that you've really focused on, and it was one of the best masterclasses that we've ever done, by the way, was this idea of creating a safe space for clients in meetings with financial planners. It's one of the things that perhaps we don't think about. Soft skills, again, I always put soft skills in quotation marks, or kind of, you know, in those, I can't remember what you call them things, but anyways, because I don't think that we should call them soft skills. I think they are just the skills that you need to be a financial planner, and also the skills that you need to just get on in life. Like, you need these kind of communication skills, and creating a safe space is part of that kind of world of communication skills, negotiation skills, stuff like that. So obviously we haven't got 50 minutes to go through the whole masterclass like you did to our members, but can you give us like the kind of top tips on making sure that financial planners do create that safe space for clients when they're coming into the meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for flagging that up, because I thought it was a great session too. So this safe space has got two parts to it. Firstly, be aware of what clients could be going through when they meet up with you. We can tease this out a little bit later. But basically what that means is, both in terms of what it's like to meet for an advisor for the first time, and what else is going on in their lives. Why are they there, right? Is there a death or a divorce, a retirement? Is there a major life event happening? And how does that affect people's ability to focus, people's ability to engage, and you know, actually be present, and also, you know, implement the advice or whatever it is that you're going to recommend to them. And secondly, be aware of your own behavior, your own attitudes, and how they affect how you interact, and what you're subconsciously signaling to clients in that room or in that meeting. It's really easy to get triggered by clients. We get triggered really easily in general as humans, because we're wired to watch out for danger. So we're kind of always there. And it's also really easy to trigger clients with subconscious bias or judgment. So awareness is the key here around that. So my three top tips are in you know, creating safe spaces are: always ask questions, and always ask follow-up questions. They're massively important, this process, particularly in the first meeting, and whenever there's another life event going on for that person. Could be the reason they're there, or could be just, you know, 5 years down the line, there's a death, a divorce, an inheritance, moving house, having babies. All these things are massively challenging for people. So understand and ask questions, ask follow-up questions. And the questions need to be about them and who they are, what they're going through, not financial questions. You don't create safety by asking someone whether they have an ISA. That's not going to make them feel any better or any safer, whatever the answer to that is. And client satisfaction in survey after survey after survey is directly linked to the amount of time clients get to talk in a meeting. So just resist the urge to talk about yourself. Don't talk about what you can do or what you've got or whatever. It's certainly not in the first meeting. All those nice things on your wall, they're fantastic and they're really important, but they're a hygiene factor. Clients know that, or, you know, take it on trust that you know what you're talking about. And I guess the second thing would be give them advice that they can take and meet them where they are at that moment in time. If they need to save £500 a month and they can only afford £300 a month, then 300 is fine. Don't give them a £500 target when they can't meet it. And remember, transitions are difficult processes for people. Understand where they are in that transition, that life event. Could be great this week, could be more difficult next week. And finally, don't ignore discomfort. It only leads to non-compliance. Call it out. If things look like they're not going well, just call it out. Take ownership of it. Because if you try and ignore it, if you try and steamroller someone to signing something or whatever else it is, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to do it.
I was leaving a bit of space there just in case you wanted to continue because I'm now following these principles of listening. So,
well done. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I've stopped talking, but I haven't stopped thinking. However, I've that's all I want to say on that subject.
So I agree with everything that you just said. I think the particular point where it really struck me was when you said don't talk about finances straight away. So if we think of what people who have never been to a financial planner before think that they're going to get from a financial planner in that first meeting, it's all the stuff that we would probably say not to do. So they're going to ask me about how much money I've got in my bank. They're going to ask me about how much I've got in my pension. They're going to ask me about how much I need to save and all that kind of stuff. And like you said, that is what's making them anxious. So if you can really surprise them, and I do think it's an element of surprise. I've seen the surprise on clients' faces when they come in and you spend 45 minutes talking about everything else other than finances. And it's a beautiful surprise because all of a sudden they're getting this space and this time to talk about themselves, which they've never, ever really had before. And they've never really thought about the stuff that you're asking them. You know, like even me, for instance, if someone asked me, what do you really want to do? And they just left that hanging in the air. I've never had the chance to answer that question before. Like in terms of just me being the spotlight being on me. I've thought about it in my head in terms of God, what am I doing with my life? But I've never really like had someone else on the external side ask me that question, and that's really, really, really powerful. And we've spoken about this a few times on the podcast before, but it was lovely to hear you say that again as well.
Thanks. Yeah. It needs to be about them because it means they can answer in a way that's relevant to them. Otherwise, if you're saying how much have you got in your pension, have you got, it's all about an information transfer. It's information that I need to do my job. It's not about you anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to cover some numbers, but you know what I'm saying is, if you want to make clients feel safe, start off by understanding who they are and why they're there and what drives them, what motivates
them. And this ties in lovely to the next thing I want to talk about, which is what they're actually feeling. So we covered this with George Kinder when he came on the podcast, and he was trying to get us kind of to idealize in our heads what clients are going through whilst they're driving or whilst they're traveling to that first meeting with a financial planner. And they're not feeling safe. I think that's probably, I think we can all agree on that. I mean, there'll be a select few who are uber confident and don't really, you know, they may feel higher levels of safety than other people, for instance, but the majority of people are not in a safe environment when they're traveling to this, because the money is something that we don't even talk about with the closest people in our lives. Like for instance, I don't have a clue how much money is in my parents' bank account. I don't even know how much money is in my spouse's bank account. And this is something that we just it's something that is hugely taboo. And to ask to go to a meeting where someone else is going to ask you those questions, that is also hugely scary. But
yeah.
can you just comment on what do you think and what do you know clients are feeling when the first time that they meet a financial planner?
Everything you've said is 100% correct, and you may also have grown up being told we don't talk about money, so there could be an extra layer of stress involved for an individual who's been growing up thinking that money is grubby and that wealth is corrupting and all those things, and yet here they are because there's some major transition, some major life event. They need to go and sort it out, and they need to talk to a financial advisor. So it can be really, really challenging. And so in general, the where people are depends on their financial state, what's going on for them in their lives, what their relationship with money is, what they understand about money, and the various messages they got around themselves and money in childhood. So I think it's really helpful to look through the lens of stressors. So the two biggest stressors for humans and most mammals, in fact, all mammals, are uncertainty and lack of control. Which, if you look around what's going on in the UK and everywhere else, I think as uncertainty and lack of control applies to everybody right now. So,
Yeah.
so these could be pretty high for individuals, and that's why helping to create or creating a safe space is about understanding that and making sure that you minimize uncertainty and lack of control. So if you think about kind of what they're going through, they they've never done this before. They don't know what to expect. They don't know anything about you. They don't know what you're going to ask or where it's going to go. They don't know if they like you or if you're going to like them, which is also a major worry. And as we've touched on, there's something major going on for their lives. So being sensitive to that is really, really important. And that starts with maybe asking if a client says, they've never been to a financial advisor before, then what they're trying to say to you, what they're potentially saying to you is actually, this is really hard for me, or this is, I'm pretty scared right now. So, like we did, our example is if a child's never swum before and you're standing by the side of the swimming pool and saying, jump in, that could actually be quite scary for them. In fact, it probably is quite scary. So I mean, what you say in that, how do you reduce the uncertainty and lack of control and fear in that situation, is to say something simply like, well, this is probably quite hard for you. How are you feeling? How are you doing today? And what that does is it acknowledges the feelings that the other person is going through and makes them feel heard, and it validates the fact that actually, what, I am scared, and I'm probably feeling stupid about being scared. And when people say things like, this is probably going to sound really silly, or it's a stupid question, I know, but no, none of that. There are no stupid questions in that situation. If you're feeling scared and you need to know X, Y, Z, whatever it happens to be, it's okay to ask it. And we need to make people feel safe to ask questions and safe to talk about themselves. So picking up on those little things like, I've never been to see a financial advisor. Okay, that's could be really hard for you. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
And maybe they're okay with it. Maybe they're going, actually, you know what? I'm really excited. This is fantastic. I'm looking forward to doing this for ages. But you won't know. So just simply anticipate that this could be very challenging for them and ask them questions about how they're doing, where they're at, what's going on. And you'll learn to understand where they are and you can respond to that.
Yeah. It's yeah, perfect. I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think I almost as well think this could start before meetings as well.
Sure.
Something which I've been toying with over the past few weeks is this idea of telling clients what they can expect from that first meeting. So let's just take a very kind of, modern example, but simple example. So if a client books in with you, let's say on something like Calendly, for instance, and if you're in the audience and you haven't heard of Calendly yet, I mean, that's your homework. Go and check that out because it will change your life. But let's just
Other calendars are available.
well, yeah, they are, yeah. Yeah, but probably just use Calendly. So if let's just say a client books in a meeting with you, you can automate something which can go to them directly to their email address, which is a short, I don't know, minute video from you, which can be interactive if you want it to be as well, where it's your face, you're talking through what you're going to go through in that first meeting with them. You can guarantee that no other financial advice firms around you in the local area are going to be doing that kind of thing for their clients. And what that does is it means that before they come to that first meeting, they know what to expect. And surely that's going to increase the levels of safety that they feel, because there's no uncertainty there. There is a bit of a lack of control, but at least you're solving half of that kind of problem that they have. They're still going to have levels of uncertainty because they're not going to know exactly what you're going to ask them, but it certainly reduces the amount of uncertainty. If you can say to them, this is what we're going to talk about, this is what we want you to bring, this is how the meeting runs, that is a first step to increasing safety there. And I'm just interested what you think about that.
Well, you're absolutely right. So setting it up to give them a level of certainty, and there's also a level of control. So if you're saying, well, actually, we're going to be talking a little bit, our questions are not a financial, that we'd like to understand more about you and your background, then that is giving the person a level of control. Oh, they're going to talk about me. Okay, fine, great, because I know about me.
Yeah.
I'm an expert on me and my life story. So it's not, it ticks both boxes. And yeah, just I guess the way I would look at this is flip it around and go, well, what shouldn't you do? So don't start this process if you're going to send something to someone beforehand by creating more uncertainty and making them feel more unsafe. You
Yeah.
better to be neutral and not do anything than give them a bunch of questions that they need to come armed with that are going to make them feel bad. And those are the ones about, pensions, ISAs, this, that, and the other, all of that stuff. Don't tee that up in advance because you're going to make someone feel bad before they've even had the meeting.
Yeah.
So look at it from the lens of safety, and is this going to make someone feel safe or not? And I think the answers are fairly straightforward if you look at it through that lens. So absolutely, yeah, tee it up, reduce the uncertainty, make them feel they're in control, and do that with something that's really nice in advance. We're really looking forward to have you come in and learning more about you.
That's perfect. Yeah. I mean, that's a 10-second video. If you wanted it to be, it's dead simple. Takes minutes to implement and can be automated. So
yeah, you can park here, or you can do this. You'll meet so and so at the door, or David at the door, and then Dan will be ready to welcome you.
Yeah, tiny touches, but massive increments on safety. Yeah, 100%. So we have a lot of people in the audience who will be at the start of their career in financial planning, or even those who are already financial planners, but they're just looking to, I mean, everyone's looking to continuously improve their meeting skills. And I could have asked the question of, so what are your top tips for client meeting skills? I mean, you could go on for days with that kind of stuff. Like, it's a bit subjective as well. Like some things work for some people and some things don't for others. But I'd rather flip it and think it was kind of touch on what you went in the last answer that you gave, but like things not to do. Like, what would you say absolutely to avoid in meetings with clients for financial planners?
Yeah, I was really interested in the way you flip the question around, because it does give it a slightly different lens, and maybe it's easier to concentrate on what I shouldn't do rather than go, well, what was it I had to do again? Oh, listen, that was it. Listening,
Yeah,
yeah, that was
exactly.
it. Hang on a minute, I've lost the track. Where were we? Okay, so don't talk about yourself unless asked. Don't talk about yourself. There's this classic example of someone going, we'd love to learn all about you. We're looking forward to learning all about you and understand your background and everything. But first, I need to tell you a little bit about our firm. No.
Yeah.
Put it in the background. Seems simple. Don't argue with clients. Really simple rule, but don't argue with clients. Don't preach. Don't tell. Don't persuade. It's really easy to get triggered by clients. And then when you get triggered, you stop listening properly, and you start, talking about yourself, because we want clients to talk about themselves because it makes them feel good and it's a fantastic way to understand them. We also like to talk about ourselves because it makes us feel good. So try and resist that temptation. Don't talk about yourself. Don't talk about numbers, budgets, retirement, all those potentially triggering terms until you've established how the client feels about those things. For most people, the word budget is horrible. Some people prefer spending plan. You don't know that. So you can't use that term or retirement till you've asked the client, or at least understood how the client feels around that. Don't give advice as if it's in a vacuum. Advice that's given, plans that are given, are in the context of hugely competing demands for time, energy, as well as money. It's not like it's the only thing going on in their lives. It isn't. It has to dovetail with everything else. Don't baffle them with jargon and incomprehensible language. It's the number one reason clients never come back, because they don't want to sit there and go, I'm really sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. No client wants to do that. They smile and wave, and you'll never see them ever again. Um, and try not to focus on building rapport, focus on building trust. Rapport is, oh great, you've got a dog, or oh, you have two kids, and all those things are nice if you're going to go and have a drink with someone. It's not the same as building trust. Don't confuse the two. Nothing wrong with it, but don't overly focus on it. And remember that it's really, really easy to stop listening. So when you find a client that disagrees with you, you can move into, oh, wait a minute, I need to persuade the client, etc. But interestingly enough, and then you've stopped listening because you've stopped asking the client why they think that way. You're now telling them why they're wrong. Not great for safety. The other interesting thing that happens when you find someone that you agree with is you stop listening because you're then telling them how much you are similar to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the dog thing is particularly like when you said about the rapport. I think that's one of the things that a lot of us do kind of confuse, because it seems like a natural human thing to say to find commonalities between ourselves.
Sure.
But then what that actually does is it does the opposite, which is it turns the conversation away from them, which is what you want it to be, onto you. And that is again not a good thing for safety, and it's not what we're going for here.
You're trying to build trust, and it doesn't build trust. Is fundamentally, it's okay. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's great to build rapport. We love building rapport, but don't confuse it with building trust. Don't think because you both have a Labrador that means that they feel safe and trust you with their money.
I think that might be the quote of this podcast, to be honest. I'm gonna afterwards. I'm gonna put that in speech marks and credit that to you because that is it's brilliant. And I think as well with this kind of stuff as well, we're not expecting everyone to get this right tomorrow or today. Like this is a journey. This is a knowledge journey. You're going to get this stuff wrong for a considerable period of time. There'll be certain things that you forget to do. There'll be mistakes that you make, but that's how we learn is through mistakes. And this stuff takes practice. It does.
Sure. If I look at my coaching now compared to what it was 4 or 5 years ago, it's different. It's better, but
That's a great thing as well, though. I mean, I'm stealing here from one of our directors at NextGen, Rohan, but he always says, like, if you don't look back at your client meetings from a year ago and cringe at some of the things that you used to do, it means that you're not growing fast enough. Like that, and that's true. You should look back. I mean, no one's ultimately perfect. So you're going to continuously look back and think, I wish I'd said something different there. I wish I did something different there.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting balance between self-acceptance and striving to be better. And you need to feel capable of doing both. Otherwise, you're going to beat yourself up over one side or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think the point is I just want to get across to people is if you're not doing this stuff now, or you feel like you're miles away from doing this kind of stuff now, then it's not like that you need to start doing this tomorrow. It's going to take some time, and try not to overpressure yourself too much into thinking that everyone is doing this and therefore you need to implement this tomorrow.
It is going to take time, and it probably sounds quite scary. So practice at home, ask better questions at home. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be in the client space particularly. You do want to ask better questions in the client space, and you do want to do better listening, but that's a life skill. It's not just what we bring to our jobs, it's what we should be doing with our partners, with our friends, with our kids, with our parents. Yeah. All the people that we love and respect, we should be doing better listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. I mean, that has just been. I think we'll probably move on now to look at money coaching. But I mean, that is the last 20 minutes that we've spent speaking about that kind of stuff. There, if I heard that when I was starting out as a financial planner, that would have been immensely valuable to me because it's not just. I think the question about actually not doing things really does work, and I think because, like you said, if you try to remember 10 million things that you should be doing, then you forget them and it's confusing and you're never going to remember them all. But if you try and remember 5 things that you shouldn't be doing, that makes it a lot easier for you. and it means that you're just constantly weeding out those not bad things, but the kind of less perfect things that you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
okay. It's a
yeah,
journey.
exactly. So let's move on to money coaching because it's something I really do want to cover on. We haven't covered this for ages on the podcast, but it's really on the rise here in the UK. I don't know if there are any statistics on how many money coaches there are in the UK. There probably is. I should have done some research on that before this podcast. Sorry, everyone. But it is on the rise, and there's more people doing it.
Not enough is probably the answer to that.
Yeah, yeah,
More than 5 years ago, but not enough. Yeah.
yeah. But it's upward trend, which is positive. And this next question sounds like it's in one of the first client meetings that you have with people. So I'm going to try and be the best money coach that I can be for this question here. And I'm just going to ask you this question. What does money coaching mean to you?
So my soundbite kind of answer to this, but I've thought about it a lot over the last couple of years, is money coaching is a framework for understanding how you think and how you feel and how you behave around money. And when you understand that, it's about everything that triggers you, everything that you are reactive to, how you think and feel and behave around it. And understanding that process, building an awareness around that process is really, really powerful, because then you can make better decisions, reduce anxiety and other negative emotions, and communicate in healthy ways. So really, I see it as a framework rather than an activity.
Never really thought about it that way before. Yeah, and there's so I mean it's not only in the UK. I mean, I've seen people in the US practicing this kind of stuff as well, and like is it a framework to them as well, do you think? Like, do they see it as a framework, or would they see it as an activity? Like, does
So,
everyone have that same kind of view as you?
so I guess if we step back and take the word money out of it and ask, what is coaching?
Mm,
I think coaching is a framework for helping people make better choices around whatever it is they're doing. So what does a running coach help you do? He helps you understand how your body works, how your mind works, puts together a training program, and helps you to morph from a person who runs into a runner at an identity level. When you start with running, as an example, you start as someone who runs. I might do a park run, I might do a half marathon, but eventually you move in, and if you keep doing it, you move into the person who had an identity is a runner. What am I doing today? Okay, well, I'm going to do a run, or it's a Saturday, so I'm going to do a long run, or whatever it is. Is it raining? Never mind, I'm a runner. Do I go out and get absolutely lashed the night before? Well, I've got a training run tomorrow. I'm a runner. So your identity around that changes. And so a money coach is the same thing, except we put the word money into it. How do I make better decisions? How do I, at the identity level, embody or believe in myself as a person who manages their finances well?
yeah. Well, I love analogies, and that was a really good analogy. I like that. That's really good. And at the start of this podcast, we mentioned like the idea that these things don't need to be so financial planning and money coaching don't need to be mutually exclusive. They're not two different things. You can put the elements of money coaching, and you should really be putting the elements of money coaching into the stuff that you do with clients. So
Yes, because money coaching is not an activity. I mean, it is, right? Coaching itself, okay, coaching a client around self-limiting beliefs is an activity, but money coaching as a framework for understanding how people think and feel and behave is exactly what you want to put into a planning relationship.
yeah. So can you just kind of like, could we go through some of those elements perhaps that you use of money coaching, and just for the people in the audience who are financial planners, just maybe we've talked a bit about some of it, but again, just on a kind of higher level, what are some of the elements of that money coaching process and framework that financial planners can use in their process with their clients, do you think?
Yes, so I'll just give you a bit of framework and then tie into what planners can use. So when I work with clients, we start with understanding how your money relationship works. What are your beliefs? Where did they come from? Are they true, or are they just something you've inherited? Are they helping you or blocking you? and then you look for the links between your beliefs and relationship with money and positive financial behaviors. And then this level of awareness allows you to go, oh, right, now I understand why I do that and why I think that. That's not actually mine. That came to, that's my father's. So in my example, when I first came across money coaching, I had this moment of realization that I, for the whole of my life, have been dragging around with me my father's money anxiety and his other anxieties about switching lights off, anxieties about not opening the fridge or keeping the fridge, all that stuff I never chose to have. And it was negatively impacting me because it makes you anxious. And when you're anxious, you make bad decisions, and it spills over into your relationships. So that's the process of kind of understanding what drives your behavior. Is it working for you? Is it undermining you? Is it helping you? And how do you develop conscious positive engagement with your finances? Now, that's my personal journey, and that's the journey my clients go on with me. If we pull it back to advisors and planners, a client's money beliefs, their relationship with money, informs the way they save and they spend and they invest. And that's pretty much what you do with them. Actually, it also informs the way they earn or how much they earn. So all those things that you do, so you look at their saving, their spending, their investment, are driven by their clients' money beliefs. So the money coaching framework, which is how do I understand my beliefs, my behaviors, my emotions, my actions around money, are what's going to drive your relationship with them and your ability to guide them and help them to save and spend and invest. So that's the link between the two, if that answers your question.
It does. And I think there's a lot of financial planners who are kind of, they don't understand why their clients don't do what they tell them to do.
Right. Well, I gave them the numbers. I showed them the plan. I put it on the spreadsheet. What's wrong with that?
Yeah,
Why don't they get it? Of
I think
course.
if we understand, if financial, I say we there, the royal we of financial planners understand those money beliefs and understand their kind of personality with money and their relationship with money, we're much more likely to understand, perhaps, firstly, why they're not doing the things that we tell them to do, and also how to change what we tell them to do to make sure that they actually do it.
Right. So the question to ask is the advice wrong, or is it the way I've delivered it? Where is the non-adherence? Who takes ownership of that? And if you go, well, I gave them the plan and they didn't implement it, it's their fault. I think you've missed the point completely, because you didn't give them the right or the advice and meet them where they currently are.
Yeah.
So when you think about it from an adherence perspective, the problem is not with the client. The problem is either with the advice or the way it was delivered if they don't take it on board.
Yeah. And this is where things like engagement tools and stuff like that come into it, because there's so many great ways out there now to deliver this kind of stuff. We've seen some fantastic stuff coming from the US and around the world in terms of how they're actually engaging with their clients. It's not just giving them a suitability report and saying, I'll see you in a year's time. It's next level stuff.
Sure.
And
some clients like graphs, some clients like numbers, some clients you don't know because you haven't asked. So have you ever sat in a meeting where a client, where the planner said, before we talk about numbers, can I ask you, how comfortable are you with numbers? Do you like numbers? Do they scare you? Tell me about your relationship with numbers. Now, if somebody's in there go, you know what, I've never liked numbers. I've been bad with maths. It's just haunted me all my life. What have you got there? You've got a major insight that if you've got like a spreadsheet and a whole set of plan and all it's got is numbers in, you're never going to get that. Client's never going to take it on board because they're scared by numbers. You need to find a different way to communicate what you want to do with that client.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. Really valuable again. I'm just as well sticking with the money coaching side. We again, to mention George Kinder again, we talked about this on the podcast that we did with him. I think a lot of the stuff that he talked about kind of intertwines a bit with money coaching, which is cool. And we talked about the really great questions that we can ask clients to kind of dig this stuff out. We all know the power of a question. Like, you can change someone's life with just one simple question. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but it is very, very true. And that's the power of language, the power of words, the power of questions, the power of sentences. So what we're trying to do with this kind of stuff and with financial planning is to create that kind of deeper connection between us and the client. And it's that trust thing that you mentioned before. So can you give us some like examples of like like the questions that you love? And you're smiling because I know that this excites you. Like what some of really like the pièce de résistance of questions that financial planners can ask their clients to create a deeper connection?
So I'm going to preface this by saying that the key is not necessarily to focus on finding the magic questions, but to approach every conversation with a curious mind, to ask genuine questions and good follow-up questions. The follow-up question is much more important than the initial question. The initial question has to be sensitive to what's going on in the room and what you feel comfortable asking. It's not a scripted process. But the questions I like to ask clients, and remember, clients, when they come to me for money coaching. So we are going to be talking about money, and we are going to be talking about money in themselves. So I get a slightly easier ride on this. But questions like, what did you hear about money growing up? Something simpler is, what is the catalyst for bringing you here today? What would you say is the most important thing about money for you? Or how does money make you feel? Or can you tell me some of the money messages you got growing up? What sort of things did your parents say? What do you think they meant by that? So the follow-up question is, oh, that's really interesting. What do you think they meant by that? Or how has that influenced you? Or how do you feel about that right now? And then you go into the follow-up question from that. And what I would say is that what freaks most people out about this process is, how do I get permission? It's your own fears that get you in the way of asking questions a lot of the time. Clients are happy to talk about themselves. They need to feel safe, and you need to ask permission. So you start with the permission question, which is something simple like, at NextGen, we don't think we have the right to tell you what to do with your money until we have a better understanding of who you are. If you don't mind, before we talk about your money, I'd like to learn more about you and your story. Do you mind? Would that be okay? And then and if the clients will usually say, yeah, sure, that's no problem at all. And then you can ask that question. So you don't come out with it cold. You don't, even George Kinder, you don't come out with and if you had 24 hours left to live, what would you do question. You don't throw that one straight in there. You tee it up, you get permission. And remember, we're talking about building safety. So you have to be sensitive to the situation. And sometimes clients won't want to, and that's all right too.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that the follow-up questions are much more powerful than the original questions. I've never really, again, this is why this podcast is so good, because I've never really thought about it that way before. We learned about this in something called the thinking environment, which is the idea, and I've got a podcast coming out on this soon, which is the idea of giving someone the space to think for a certain period of time, and then just when they think they've finished that, you repeat it and say, what else do you think about that? Or how else have you got anything else to add to that? And then all of a sudden they have to rack their brain, and it's like, actually, I have got more things to think about this, which I never would have said unless you asked that question.
That's Nancy. Is that Nancy Klein? The thinking.
Nancy Klein. Yeah.
That's so powerful. So powerful. That's the whole thing about when they've stopped talking, they haven't stopped thinking. Would you like to add more to the subject? Is there anything else you can think of? All of that stuff is really, really important. And you mentioned agendas beforehand. So you have an agenda, you've given it to the client, and you know what? It doesn't really matter. Don't drag them back from what they're talking about to enough about you. Now I've got these 4 things I need to do before the end of the meeting. Very negative messaging, dragging it back to you, dragging it back to what you want, not talking about their needs. So the thinking environment that you referenced there is the complete opposite of that. How is it, how do I make it safe for the client to think and give them all the time and all the permission they need to think? So the follow-up question, since you mentioned that, is really important, because the follow-up question shows that you're listening, shows that you're interested, and it shows that you care. All those 3 things are core components of building trust. And that's why the follow-up question is much more important than the initial question.
Yeah. Definitely.
And not just the one follow-up question. You develop, you take what they say and you move with it a little bit. That's actually quite hard for people. They go, well, I can memorize the first question, but I don't know
Yeah.
what to do with what the client says afterwards. And all I can say to you is, don't worry about that. Just practice it.
Hmm. Yeah. But it can be as something as simple as how does that make you feel? Or
Sure.
what else do you have to say on that? That
Yeah.
is a perfectly. I mean, it doesn't exactly necessarily prove that you're listening to them, but but you are. But it doesn't prove that to them, but it gets them thinking even more, which then that proves that you are listening to them.
Yeah, and you can preface it. You can say, well, that sounds like that was really challenging, or it sounds like you got some really strong messages about money, or it sounds like that was really hard for you at that point in time. How do you think about it now, looking back?
Yeah.
How do you think that influenced you? What kind of messages did you get? Are they still influencing you today? Do you think they're helpful? Do you think they how do you think they yeah, helped you on your journey, or do you think they have limitations?
Yeah.
It's back to the question that follows on from the question beforehand. And maybe the people, most people have never really thought about this stuff. So it's not scary in that sense. It's actually for them sometimes really, really enlightening. The process of articulating something is often gives you insights. It's often really powerful for that person that's gone, I never really thought about it that way. But now you come to mention that, that makes a lot of sense right now. Now, if you want your clients to come out of that meeting going, that's the best conversation I ever had around money, then you're already starting now that process to make them lifelong clients or to keep them as lifelong clients. Because if you want to be the planner that does something different, you have to do something that is different. You have to do something different. And this is just ticks all of those boxes.
Yeah. And a lot of what you were talking about there and in the previous bit was about this kind of idea of carrying around your parents' money beliefs, which you have done, well, have had done in the past. I don't know if you still have that kind of same money anxiety from your father. Um, and this comes into something that you offer at Cambridge Money Coaching, which is the money coaching for parents, which
Yeah.
is a fantastic idea. I love it. When I was reading this, I was like, oh man, that sounds incredible. And it's the the tagline for it is to help raise financially responsible children.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, like, of all the things. I mean, my brain went crazy when I saw this because I was thinking of how much impact we could have on society if children had a better relationship with money from an earlier age.
Yeah.
And it ties into the financial education space about, like, um we don't learn about money until we have it and until we make mistakes with it and until we're forced to do certain things with it, like buy a house or all that kind of stuff or pay
Yeah.
bills. So can you just kind of take us through what that looks like, and maybe just a quick comment on what that actually is and why you decided to do it?
Yeah. So I just want to tease something out a little bit. We learn a lot about money growing up. We learn most of the things that we learn about money are set before the ages of 7. So you're right in a sense that we learn about mortgages and we have to get a mortgage, and we learn about overdrafts and we're overdraft. We learn about credit cards. So in that sense, yes, learning from an experiential perspective is what happens later in life. But most of our money beliefs are set at a really young age, as are most of our beliefs about everything, including how families operate, how parents talk to each other, what is a nuclear family, what is a blended, what is the normal kind of relationship that parents have with their kids, what are the normal relationships that siblings have with each other, all of that stuff that comes out of the crucible of early childhood is our kind of normal for us. And the reason for that is because the learning process, the subconscious learning process, is a core survival process. We're not born with the ability to do anything when we're born as infants. In fact, the reason that we're born when we're born is because if babies grew any larger inside, they wouldn't be able to come out. So we come out being not even able to lift our heads for the first 3 months. So learning, right? Learning is really, really, really powerful. and we absorb everything in the um, in the environment that goes on around us, learning how to feel safe, learning what things are considered safe, what you do to get your needs met within the family environment. So when I looked at this space, and actually started off in kind of financial literacy for 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, and teaching kids about money, and that's fantastically powerful. But the best way to fix this for future generation is to teach parents how to raise financially capable children, is to teach parents, not because I want parents, because I'm trying to throw all the responsibility on them particularly, it's just because that's where the learning process takes place. It takes place in those first 7 years. So you are the parents. You can do what you want in 12, 13, 14. If you can take a 16-year-old and go, well, you know what, here's healthy eating, here's 5 a day, here's exercise. If they go home and they've grown up in an environment where everyone's on the couch eating donuts and watching Gogglebox, that's going to drive, and I mean that non-judgmentally, but that's going to drive their behavior, not what they learn at school around healthy eating and 5 a day. So teaching parents about teaching kids around money, I do it as a 1-hour webinar or a presentation. I also run it as a workshop for people who want to tease out a little bit more. They want to do it over 2 hours or 3 hours. But fundamentally, there are 6 key steps to teaching your kids to be good with money. And the first and most important one is understand your own behavior and messaging. If you grow up in an environment where there's a lot of friction around money, you're going to associate money with anxiety and shouting and pain. That's how it works. You can't change that. You can't apply rationality because A, it's subconscious, and B, you're 6. You don't have an understanding how the world works, but your brain is trying to form a model of how the world works. It's looking for patterns. And yeah, if every time the credit card bill comes, there's a huge, massive row and someone storms out of the house, that's going to form an indelible impression of credit cards or money or whatever it is at that point in time. Similarly, if you grew up in a family where people go, let's go and buy a new TV, or let's go and buy a car. Now, why don't we all sit together and talk about this? What can we afford? How does it make sense? What does that process of choosing something or buying something look like? Do I just wander into a shop and go, what's the biggest TV you've got? I'll have that one. Or do we sit down and go through a conscious process of assessing what we need, what's available, using the thing on Currys where you can compare 5 different TVs or whatever else it is. So what are you modeling? What are you messaging to your children about money and about money in themselves? So that's the first one. Teaching children about chores and responsibility is building a work ethic. And you have to do that yourself. You have to model it. You have to do your own chores. You have to show them what it's like. Reflective discussions and decision-making, I just touched on again around kind of talking about how you make good purchasing decisions. Teaching financial literacy is about allowances, pocket money, whatever you want to call it. It starts as pocket money, it's going allowances. What you're teaching children is how to make spending decisions, and you're letting them make all their mistakes and learnings at an age where mistakes can be corrected, lessons can be learned, and it's small amounts of money. All my kids have gone online and they bought stuff. They bought drones for 20 quid and God knows what else. They, a shell suit for like 10 quid and gone, that's really great. Oh, wait a minute. No, hang on a minute. Let's move the candle away. So you're going to learn from those experiences. You have to give kids the chance to make those experiences, learn from that. And that's about pocket money. And that's also a process around explaining to them what it's for. It's not extra money. It's not free money. It replaces money you would have spent on them, but it allows them to learn what the budgeting process, how to make, 5 quid last a week, is something that's really important, because at some point you're going to have to make £2,000 last a month. So if you practice that between the ages of 10 and 15, you're in a much better position. You can't teach budgeting to a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old the week before they go to university. They've never done it before. Charity is another one. And the final one is talk the talk, don't shut down money conversations. If your child comes home and goes, how much is our house worth? Or are we in financial trouble? Don't block it, because what you're telling them is we don't talk about money. And then you end up in a situation where they can't talk about money. And there's enough guilt and shame around this space anyway without you adding to it.
Yeah. That's something I was about to comment on when you'd finished talking, was the danger of like you mentioned about the negative thing about money, and then on the other side there was the positive thing about having conversations about money. In the middle is just where the silence around money, where you just don't talk about it at all, and that's equally as dangerous as having negative. It's not maybe not equally as dangerous, but it's almost as dangerous as just as having negative associations with money, because the silence around it to me screams something negative, like, oh, we don't talk about that. It's a bit like
Yes.
he who shall not be named in Harry Potter. It's like, oh, we don't
Yes.
talk about that because it's a negative thing.
You either positive or you're not. I don't think there's a great deal of neutrality in this. I worked for American Express for a large number of years, and they always said, from a brand perspective, every experience with the brand is either positive or negative. It's not neutral because you want it to be positive. So neutral doesn't cut it.
No. Yeah. Great stuff. Well, we've been talking now for 56 minutes. It's just ticked over, in fact, onto that figure. And it's been absolutely incredible. I've learned so much stuff from this, and I think the audience will have as well. The final question which we ask everyone is, we always like to ask people for a book or a piece of content or something that has helped them kind of really think about things differently and really left a lasting impact on them. What would you say? What would you recommend our audience consume?
Ooh, yeah, you broaden that a little bit. It depends on what you want. So I'm going to give you two books, because if you want to learn about money, then The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, I think, is the best book I ever read. I learned more about that than 30 years of working in banks. If you want to learn about your relationship with money, then Money Magic by Deborah Price is the best book that I've read on that. And in general, if you want podcasts, then the best podcast I like, it's got everything on it, is Feel Better, Live More. But if you want to focus on the financial side, then Brendan Fraser, the
Human side of money.
human side of money. I've learned so much from that as well myself. So yeah, if you listen to him, you'll recognize some of the words I've used and some of the terms I've used as well, because he's really blazing a path on this one. So yeah, all three are good. It's about self-awareness. Whatever works for you that you can resonate with in terms of learning and the learning process, then go for it.
Yeah, I think it's about time we got Morgan Housel on the podcast if we can get him. I've been trying to trying to sniff around and see if I can find some kind of connection to him, because he'd be a wonderful podcast guest. So if anyone in the audience knows Morgan, or if Morgan, somehow you're listening to this podcast, it'd be lovely to get you on. But yeah, all of those recommendations are really good. We've had Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money recommended more times than I can care to imagine on this podcast. So but equally, Brendan Fraser, he's doing some brilliant work as well. So great recommendations. I think we should probably end it there, because we've been talking again now for 58 minutes. So we don't want to hold up too much of people's time, but that's been really, really useful. I've really enjoyed it today. And what we'd like to do is give the last word to the person who's coming on the podcast to say a big thank you for you to coming on. So can you tell our audience where to find you, how to connect with you, and leave us with any last words that you've got as well?
Oh, thank you, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed every minute of it. I can't believe it's been an hour. So I am Dennis Harhalakis. You can find me at LinkedIn. And you can find me at Cambridge Money Coaching. So cambridgemoneycoaching.uk is my website. Cambridge Money Coaching is all one word. And yeah, please connect with me. I'll try and reach out and connect with all of you anyway at some point through the NextGen process. And please give me a call. Please get in contact. I run workshops, and we've covered a bunch of stuff that I do already. And if you're interested, please let me know. I run a monthly workshop online webinar. Next one is September 23rd. If you like what you heard today and you want to learn a little bit more, please sign up for that. There's a NextGen discount, and I'm doing a back to school discount of £25 for the September webinar. Shameless plug, but here we go.
No such thing as a shameless plug, especially not when you've given us an hour's worth of value there as well. So fantastic stuff. So that was Dennis Harhalakis on the Next Gen Planners podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, just like I did, you can, of course, share it with people and they can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on our website, nextgenplanners.co.uk, where you'll find more information about all the different things that we do here at NextGen, including our amazing community, of which Dennis is a member. And there's now over 800 of us who are all doing really good things in financial planning. We've got a conference coming up next year, and we have loads of different support packages for people and financial planning firms as well. So go and check it out. We are on all our social media channels, including TikTok nowadays as well, which is interesting. And if you want to leave us a review, that would be much, much appreciated. So please just let us know what we're doing well. It really helps the podcast to grow and get better every time we do one. But for now, I just want to say a big thank you again to Dennis for joining us on today's show. Thank you guys for listening as always, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.